outrageous, it was fantastic, it was over the top, but it built on a kind of core theme that the right has been developing for a very long time.
Now, I got ahead of myself by asking you that first question because I originally wanted to start by talking about, I think it's a Shelby v. Holder.
Yes.
And that was the Supreme Court case where a key provision of the Voting Rights Act was invalidated in 2013. And at the time, that was a shocking decision,
Yes.
and that was really bad. And there was great hope that the Voting Rights that Congress would do something, repair the damage, and we'd be back on our way. Especially since, what was it? The Senate passed it
98-0.
Yeah, basically unanimously. And now here we are. In a situation where you mentioned it, the Election Integrity Commission. If you can see me out there, I've got my air quotes. What is the purpose of this Election Integrity Commission officially, and what is it really about, to your mind?
Well, the good news is that the official purpose is actually not that far from from the real purpose. In fact, just the other day, the president referred to it as a voter fraud commission. So there's no question that this commission was created for the purpose of looking for this mythical voter fraud, right? There have been numerous studies done over the years that have demonstrated that there is no widespread in-person voter fraud in the United States. Studies done by the Brennan Center demonstrate that, there are more people who are struck by lightning than engage in in-person voter fraud. The most comprehensive study, which looked at elections over a 10-year period, found only 31 cases of in-person voter fraud out of 1 billion ballots that were cast.
1 billion.
1 billion. So we're talking about a drop in the bucket. But what President Trump said after the election about the 3 million votes being illegally cast, remember, this was all to explain that he, in fact, in his mind, won the popular vote, which we know he did not win. So that's where the 3 million number came from. It was the number that was going to demonstrate to everyone that, in fact, he won the popular vote over Hillary Clinton, which he did not. And he said, we're going to be looking into it. We're going to be studying it. And that was kind of our first inkling that he might try to do something official around this idea of voter fraud.
That's some serious CYA for like false CYA.
Yeah.
So can we get specific about voter fraud? So of the 1 billion ballots cast, this tiny number, what's one example of real voter fraud?
Well, we had one on election day this year in which a woman in Iowa, a Trump supporter, voted twice. Right? She came back and voted for him again because she just loves him so much. So now it's not an easy thing to do. That's, to think about what they're claiming. Try to imagine what in-person voter fraud looks like. It means that an actual person goes into a polling place and says that they are somebody that they are not. Right? I walk in and I say, my name is Jonathan Capehart, and the A is just missing in the book, right? But I want to vote, and presumably I'm then allowed to vote even though I wasn't you. Or I take the name of a dead person and I vote in that person's stead. Or I'm not legally allowed to vote because I'm undocumented, but somehow I've managed to get a voter registration card or some other ID that allows me to vote. So just imagining all those scenarios, first of all, it takes a very bold person.
Yeah.
There have to be a lot of serious holes in the system. And as you know, the biggest problem we have in the United States is voter turnout. It's actually our shameful numbers of people who turn out to vote, which is actually quite low compared to other Western democracies, including for the President of the United States. I think the highest figures we've had for turnout for the President of the United States is somewhere in the low 60s. FK, but we're barely, half of the electorate, a little over half of the electorate votes in our elections. So we don't have a problem of too many people showing up to vote. We have a problem of too few people showing up to vote. Now, where there can be voter fraud is around absentee ballots. That can happen, but that wouldn't be in any way managed by the voter ID laws that you've seen proliferate. So what we really think is that if you were really concerned about in-person voter fraud, you would do things that would allow the individuals at the polls to be able to manage people stepping up to them and saying, I'm here to vote more easily. So you would encourage early voting, for example, because that lessens the crunch on election day and the number of lines. It gives the poll watcher more time to process people as they come in through the lines. You would do all kinds of other things, but you wouldn't do what you've seen the right doing, which is impose these highly stringent voter ID laws that actually disenfranchise eligible voters. We demonstrated in Texas, for example, where we, along with other civil rights groups, are challenging that state's voter ID law, the most stringent voter ID law in the country. We showed that there were 600,000 eligible voters that were disenfranchised.
Wow.
600, that's the population of Baltimore, basically,
Wow.
that in Texas were made ineligible by this voter ID law. It's fundamentally anti-democratic. Now, we won that case. We won it at trial. We've won it in the Court of Appeals twice. We've been back down to the district court. And what the Court of Appeals found in that case was that the state of Texas, the legislature, created that law intentionally to disenfranchise African American and Latino voters. That's the federal Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, a conservative court, found that a legislature in this country sat down